We're going to call the order the December 11th, 2025 meeting of the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. This is the regular board meeting. Let's do the roll call. James Gordon here, Donna Egan.
Present.
Andrew Giorse.
Here.
Erica Brown.
Here.
Mike Baden.
Here.
Mark Ryder.
Here.
Timothy DeGraff.
Here.
Angelina Brandt.
Here.
Tim Wiedemann.
Here.
And Nancy Lamb.
Here.
Okay, everyone's here. Let's rise to the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there any public comment tonight? Does anyone like to say anything to the board and the agency?
Do we have anything, Betty?
No. Okay, all right. So let's get on to the approval of the agenda. Would any board member like to make any changes to the agenda that is before you? Okay,
Under communications and announcements, you have the organizational meeting. Isn't there a regular meeting right after that? Wouldn't you announce the time for a regular meeting also? It's the way it's been in the past as far as I remember. I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
The regular meeting would be immediately following.
Immediately following.
following.
Yep.
For 15 minutes.
Or at, let's say, at 6:30.
yeah, okay,
Because normally you have to notice it at a time and then say, or immediately following in case the first meeting goes over.
Okay.
okay, yeah, so why don't we say 6:30? Great, thank you, Andrew, nice catch. Any other changes to the agenda?
One thing I'd like to put on, under new business, the organic waste, just a question, maybe will lead to a discussion, so,
Okay, so question on organic waste?
yeah.
Okay,
Just, with the new permit and everything, a couple questions, so.
all right,
Rather
so
just do it in public.
All right. we'll just call it question on organic waste permitting, okay? Do we need a motion to approve that, or can we just approve the whole thing as?
As amended.
Yeah, okay, all right, so as amended, then accept a motion to approve the amended agenda,
I'll make that motion.
okay, second please?
I'm second it.
All right. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, approval of the minutes of the public hearing of September 11th, 2025. We have that before us. Nobody made any comments at the public hearing, just for the press and the public's education. So unless there's anything, I will accept a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All righty.
Oh, sorry.
Andrew.
Andrew?
Andrew.
Okay. All in favor, please?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Next are the minutes for the November 13th, 2025 regular board meeting. I want to apologize to Nancy because she sent these to me and I did not get to them in a timely fashion. And when I did, I found a couple of minor changes, little edits that needed to be made. Are those are not in this, right? No,
No.
okay. So, just for the board, just so the board knows, she learned about SECRA, State Environmental Quality Review Act. So that change will be made in the official minutes. Instead of talking about SECRA, it'll have SECRA. And I asked her to capitalize FOIL, OIL, so that people, when they read it, understand that it's Freedom of Information Act and not FOIL.
That, a while ago, I asked that anytime you use an acronym, that they, at least the first time, put it out because, most of the people don't understand what they are.
Right.
Sure.
And I don't have my version in front of me. I think I had one other change where I asked that the language be changed to reflect
The county, or the
That's it, right.
speaker.
that the speaker was the one who was asking that, or questioning whether the BEC was being transparent and not the agency. I believe that was all of them.
Yes.
Okay. So with those changes are in the document, but as I said, I didn't respond in time for her to get them to the board. But those are there.
I'll make that motion as we just amended.
Any other?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just want to give anyone a chance now. Okay,
I'll make the motion as amended.
okay, second please.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes of the November 13th, 2025 meeting? Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you. Communications and announcements. I just want to, I sent this to the board anyway, but the Riverwatch people held their meeting, I believe, on December 8th. Again, I apologize, I don't have the written in front of me. It was a half-hour long meeting with representatives of the DEC and some select organizations, including myself, to talk to the DEC about extending the rulemaking period for the leachate, the new leachate rules, leachate collection rules at landfills. We have a closed landfill, and those were not originally in the, as you all know from the discussion. So just that went fine, and I got a email a few days later saying that the DEC has agreed to something about extending. It was pretty inexact, and I haven't heard since. But basically, they said yes, they have agreed to give more time, and we'll hear more about it. But I have not heard anything more about it. But that's it.
So we haven't taken a stance where we're advocating for changes or not, just that there's more rulemaking time.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. And then, as mentioned, the organizational meeting is scheduled for January 8th, 2025, at 6:15 p.m. And the regular board meeting for January will be January 8th, 2025, at 6:30 p.m. Okay, committee reports. Any board member have anything they want to report as a committee? Thank you so much. Yeah.
There was no meeting, you said there was no meeting of the recycling policy.
That's correct.
Okay,
They're moving to quarterly meetings.
They met last month, so.
Right.
Satisfactory.
all righty. All right, recycling program update, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This month, my oral report could be a little bit different than what you may be used to, but I'd like to give some time to discuss a couple of projects we've been working on in a little bit more depth. Included in your board's packet was a new media piece from the recycling outreach team, our new festival waste and sustainability guidebook. You had a printed, hard printed version, but these were professionally printed, are available one that way. So these were created to help local event planners implement zero waste festivals and events. So the booklet showcases talking points that can be used to help motivate vendors, volunteers, or other festival stakeholders to consider zero waste practices. It's a helpful guide to navigate through our website to find lists of haulers and composting services or recycling information. And it shares a roadmap with some strategic planning ideas from 6 months out all the way to 1 week out before your event. With again, more outreach tips, recycling tips, composting, waste reduction, talking points. The booklet now exists on a new webpage under the resources tab on the agency website, which also advertises our free bin rental service, the county's Green the Scene grant program, and other information. We also upgraded our instructional signage that's associated with our bin rentals and created custom branded signs for our zero waste sorting stations to show what can be recycled, composted, or trashed at most events. And as part of this work, my team conducted some research to identify as many local events as possible in order to create an outreach database to really launch all these new resources. And our master contact list of festivals identified more than 120 events. And our waste, which is an internal tool, can be sorted by town, by event category, or by month. And so we plan to disseminate the new booklet in the new year along with that webpage and work really closely with the Ulster County Department of the Environment as they launch their Green the Scene 2.0. So I wanted to just celebrate that with you and acknowledge my teams. They've been really focused on this topic for a couple of months now. And I do have one other project that I wanted to relate to you, but I'll pause here to see if you have any questions specific to that.
I don't have questions. I think there's a lot of good information here. I just wanted to commend you on, and I'm wondering how will you get this to the, like, will you give this to the people who are running the show? How do you get this out? And how can the public get them if they want?
Yeah, so it's publicly available now on our website as a PDF. We have developed that database of over 120 local events that includes contact information if it's listed. So we plan to strategize our messaging to introduce ourselves, our recycling outreach team, hit some of the points that are in that booklet, but really also promote our free bin rental program as part of that, so that they are aware that any festival organizer can sign out those bins for recycling or composting, or just to have additional trash receptacles at their event. So we plan to do that pretty much through direct emailing where we have contact information. And then from there, we can also like snail mail them if someone wanted to request a hard copy.
Are you, or have you reached out with the Department of Tourism? Because they, on their monthly calendar, pretty much anybody who, in the county who sends them events, they list them on their calendar. So maybe there's some way we can coordinate through them to gather, more events that are happening.
We started there, absolutely.
Okay.
And the Office of Tourism was very involved in the Green Scene grant program this year, while the Department of the Environment was undergoing some staffing changes. So we have been in touch with them for sure.
The other thing that pops to mind is churches and the fire departments that have all these community breakfasts and things, because there's a lot of food waste at these, unfortunately, but there is. So that may be a way. I don't know if is there a way to do a reduced price for the rental, or is the rental already nominal enough that it sort of is not a big, I don't want it to be a hindrance to somebody using it, I guess is where I'm headed.
Great suggestion about the religious organizations and firehouses. Those are definitely captured in our list, but we
Okay.
can make sure that that's really thorough. And there's no cost for the bin rentals.
Oh, great.
They're free.
Perfect.
Just signing a form to make sure we get them back.
Yep.
We know where they're
Understood.
at. That's why it's called rental, but it's,
Got it.
it's free.
Understood.
So maybe if we call it a loan program instead of rental, because people are gonna see rental and they're gonna think they have to pay for it. They're gonna go, oh, I can't afford that.
Yeah, we try to put the word free in all caps everywhere we can, in bold, just to really emphasize that.
What would be wrong with calling it a loan?
Loaner. Yeah,
A
like
loaner.
it.
Like, recycle
Yeah.
bin loaner.
I mean, people don't always, like, when you loan something, you don't always think about it having to be returned at a certain time. Like,
That's the
it's
definition
a
of
thought
loan.
that we can consider.
Charge a security deposit,
Oh, yeah.
a
you could have
small, minimal security
yeah, that's true.
deposit, that's always.
But also, if when they come to get it, they gotta
Yeah.
sign a document saying, and that's how you trade. Don't just like let them come and get it without finding out who they are, it might work. Cause I think rentals,
It's a barrier. That's all.
if Bob was sitting here and he heard free, I heard free, and I still thought, oh, it's a rental. So since it's not, let's make that clear, cause this is great, I like this, I think this is something that, people can get more and more comfortable with. And then it'll spread, festivals. So thank you for all the good work.
Yeah, that's great.
Are you, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I love this. I'm thinking very specifically about all the people in Kingston who host events, and people will, it's not that people won't do this. I think that they can do this. I think that there could be some more hand-holding. I wonder if you would want to consider having an event, having something like a meeting where you gather folks and kind of walk them through, because they're not gonna know some of the, it's hard to do, not impossible. And I think that in Kingston, I think that the people I work with would love to do this if they had a little bit more hand holding.
Sure.
And I really think we could get there. And I was really excited to see a volunteer at the Caribbean Festival, but I didn't see a volunteer at too many of the other events, not because you weren't present, just because they probably weren't thinking about that. But I'm just thinking more hand holding.
Sure. So as part of our bin rental program, we can provide free consultation services to anyone who's launching those zero waste practices. So if they, contact us with enough lead time before their event, then we would absolutely meet with them and kind of coach them through some of the decisions or considerations around working with vendors or different composting products. So that is definitely part of our service. And I know my team is definitely interested in having like maybe a webinar or some other type of informational section, like what you were suggesting. So
Yeah, and I have some arms I can like bend. You know,
maybe just like a video, YouTube video.
Yeah.
That would be a good idea. No,
let's just do a webinar, I think that's, yeah,
Yeah, I do.
whatever.
Yeah.
You build it, but
Yeah.
that would be really lovely, I help promote Jesus up.
Most of the events are approved by the towns, because for insurance purposes and stuff, so. If you reach out to the towns and have them put that in, their information to the people that are having the events. And I'm talking about smaller events like and a lot of them, at least from our town, the town is actually responsible for the garbage and supposedly recycling and so forth. So, that's an avenue that I'm sure you've considered, but that's a good way, in my opinion, a good way to get an
You
idea.
should
Make it,
get a permit when you do something in the town.
they pass a resolution saying that
They're gonna allow it.
they name it for the insurance and stuff like that, but they do permit it, that people come in, that I've seen, they come in and ask for permission to, give it to them.
I mean, most municipal parks don't even have recycling. So that's one of the things that's on Robert's radar now is like many of them do not have recycling receptacles next to garbage cans. So to your point, like,
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have the professionally printed ones in January. The supervisors are off in December, but in January, my goal is to take some with me and get them into the hands of the town so that when people are signing up for festivals or events, they can hand out a brochure and get it recognized.
Great.
And great suggestions, Andrew, and that was definitely part of our research in trying to identify towns. We started reaching out to all the town clerks in the county just to vet, here's a list of events we found in your town. Are you aware of any others that we can add to our list?
Any other questions? Okay, and then you had something else you wanted to.
Yeah, so I also included in your board packet a town website review that was conducted by our recycling outreach team staff in October. And I wanted to conduct research into how various aspects of waste sustainability are included on town web pages about their MRDCs or their town transfer stations. And this was helpful to analyze any trends, better understand gaps in recycling education, and develop some recommendations. And as you're all aware, we are truly combating the negative effects of contaminated recycling and recognize the important role that our town transfer stations play in helping us have the highest quality of recyclables possible. So that was also some of the motivation to do this type of review. So I wanted to share some highlights. As part of the review, we found that 63% of towns have the agency's website listed as a resource on their town transfer station page. Only 32% of towns list the agency's phone number or recycling hotline. So to promote the recycling outreach team resources and additional information, we feel that towns should list the agency's website and hotline. And actively encourage residents to contact us with questions, because that's a core way that we can help them with recycling education. We found that only 26% of towns have the agency's current dual stream recycling guide listed, and that shows what can and cannot be recycled. We found that 79% of towns have an additional short description of what's acceptable for recycling, but those descriptions varied significantly in content and accuracy and consistency with our current guidelines. And we also found that some towns have recycling literature in different ways in multiple areas of their website. So to promote more consistency across our entire municipal recycling service, to reduce consumer confusion, and just improve the access to recycling knowledge, we feel that all towns should link to the agency's dual stream recycling guide from their MRDC webpage. And we would all benefit from a really clear description of accepted items in addition to the brochure. So it's just readily accessible. And that message might originate from the agency, that phrasing, so that it can be consistent across all towns and all websites. Relative to food scrap composting, only 32% of towns mention composting on their MRDC web pages, and those that do only describe it in relation to the town's composting service. We found that only one town provides educational guidance on backyard composting, so how to do it yourself. We feel that general information about composting would be a good addition to any town website. For the towns that are currently offering a composting option, this could also be useful to increase participation in their service. So we'd love to see towns considering, again, some basic information about backyard composting, especially if they do not offer a composting option. And we have resources readily available for that. Relative to reuse, we found that only 11% of towns mention reuse and repair on their MRDC website, and most that do, again, only describe it in relation to the town's program. But encouraging reuse is helpful to achieve our shared goals, and we feel the town should consider including some basic education about reuse and repair options, especially if they don't offer a reuse service at their transfer station. Again, we have resources readily available that they could link to. Wrapping up, relative to hazardous waste, we found that 84% of towns do not provide any guidance on their website regarding safe disposal options or the agency's HHW service. And for those that do, we found the descriptions, again, vary significantly in content, accuracy, or consistency with our messaging. So to promote best practices and enhance compliance for unacceptable wastes, we feel that towns can, really support that information sharing about these free options, and we have resources readily available for that. And we also reviewed the town's acceptance of other types of waste and recyclables, bulky items like furniture and mattresses, construction demolition debris, and their permit fees, which you can read about in more detail in the report. As an example, we found that the cost to dispose of a large sleeper sofa can range significantly across the MRDC system. So we thought those kind of things were interesting. So a large sofa could cost anywhere from $18 to $55. The cost to dispose of a small dresser ranged from $4 to $25. Mattress disposal also showed a really vast range across the whole system, generally $8 to $20 for a twin size, $10 to $30 for a double size, $12 to $30 for a queen or king. And the cost of an annual permit to access the MRDC service also ranges significantly from $20 to $75 for residents, or $55 to $100 for out-of-town residents. So while the agency does not set fees for towns and their services, again, the focus of our review is through the lens of enhancing recycling and waste reduction education, and we feel that the lack of consistency in the fees for furniture, mattresses, C&D, or other waste can be confusing and might impact the public's adaptability to reuse and recycle those items. And so to the extent that those wastes might interact with future agency programs, we wanted to look at that and see if that is something that could be further evaluated. So in conclusion, this review was very thorough. It was very necessary. We've developed some recommendations, which you've just heard much of, that we think can really improve the overall efficacy and long-term sustainability of our municipal recycling program. And to that extent, I just wanted to share that I'm really enthusiastic about that. I think we all need our community partners to feel that shared sense of responsibility towards recycling education, having correct information accessible for the public, and really tapping into all the resources and media that we have available to them. So we'll be sharing this report with all the town supervisors and town clerks, along with our request to strongly consider these recommendations. I'm working really closely with Mark to arrange for the dissemination of this report and other cover letters, perhaps also in some one-on-one follow-ups with new town supervisors in the new year. So this was very interesting, and I'm sure you have some questions about that. And that's all I've prepared.
How often is this done?
Excuse me?
Is this the first time this has been done?
Yeah.
When I started in 2019, I did a similar exercise that was less formal than this, but similar findings at that time. But this is the first time it's really been formulated as a study.
Donna and then Andrew? Donna, you
Go ahead,
Sure. So you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I'm gonna toss it to Mark. I mean, that's great information, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with this information? So, and I really do strongly believe that just sending emails and stuff to people gets no attention whatsoever. So the one, you suggested one-on-one meetings or going to the supervisor's meeting, or there has to be a little more in-person connection with the towns to really drive this, because you're absolutely right, that ad has to be the same, you know, even offering someone to go help work with their webmaster or something to get everything, because information is great, but if you don't execute any kind of change, then it's really a waste of time. And so that's really on you to drive that and make sure it happens.
Yeah, so this would be part of a bigger strategy and working more closely, especially with new supervisors as they're coming in, which this report happened to line up well post-November. I mean, there's considerable change in the town supervisors in the upcoming year, right? So in January, I'll go to the supervisor meeting. We will send out this memo ahead of time. We have actually like more one-on-one information for each of the towns. You know, we disaggregated it here because it's going to be a public memo and report. We didn't want to call out specific towns, but we have specific towns that we are going to have conversations with about trying to get more information up on the website, updated information. There's again a town with 2015 dual recycling guide. Things have changed drastically since then, right? So having one-on-one conversations, but also bringing them in and just having a better partnership. And this will be part of that strategy, just having them tour the facility, hopefully meeting them at their MRDC. You know, some of the members of the recycling outreach team, Kevin, Robert, have been going around to all of the transfer stations and doing tours recently. You know, and there's kind of a common thread that there's not always such great communication between the towns and the MRDCs, even though they're run that way, right? So just really working with folks that are coming in and can help change that, in that it wasn't something that existed while they're there. Also working with the ones that are continuing on and just saying, hey, this is what we found, and hopefully you can help us as we start to try to move towards more diversion, recycling of mattresses, reuse, and organics. As we're building out those programs, we would love to see more information up on the website. And again, having it start with us and link with us, as long as they're linking to our information and our information's always up to date, then it's not like us sending them a PDF and then in a year things change and they need to update their website. Like, I don't think the MRDC websites are so drastically different than the rest of the town websites. Like, they're not doing overhauls of their websites, nor should they all the time. And so not everything is always up to date. And then we have other information and we're the one receiving it in. I'll give you an example. We're going to start with it once again, a new glass vendor. This month, UCRRA, they're a recycler, and we're gonna send our glass there as opposed to sending it to where we do now, Republic, the MRF there at $100 a ton. We're gonna send it there at $40 a ton. But they've told us the same thing that we learned when we took the glass down to Queens is like, if there's if there's window glass in it, if there's ceramics, they're gonna reject it, and then we may not be able to continue working with them. So we need the towns to really like have the right information, not only on the canisters, on the website, and then paying attention to the contamination so that when we get it in, we can again secondary process it and pull out some of those contaminants, but also hopefully we're not having to do that as much and we can send it on and not get our loads rejected. So.
Follow-up question, what happened to, I might have just lost track, but we were gonna have MRDC meetings
Yeah, we,
And were they
so that's part of the new contract. We had those and they weren't well
weren't
attended.
well attended?
You know, we had 8, 9, but like, that was not 8 or 9 towns. That was like 8
4 or
or
5
9.
towns.
Yeah.
With 8 or
And
That's
and
better
at
than I thought.
multiple
It's like this,
times
though.
and at multiple locations and different times of the day and coordinating when they're not open so that they could, and again, giving them a free pull charge if they sent someone there. So now it's in the contracts that say we need to have people, because this is the time that we provide that information. And we have, you know, Angelina does a great job providing flyers, providing other things. We've provided signs, but
They gotta put them up.
nothing, they gotta come get it.
Last question, I promise. Why do we care what they charge? Why are we messing with that? Why would we care if it's consistent what they charge at each of the towns?
Well,
That's their business, right?
sure, and so that's just part of the report that we're talking about, but if we're trying to recycle mattresses, right, oftentimes when people are going to the town transfer stations, they feel like they're just getting passed on fees from us. Now, if we're charging the towns $10 a mattress, but they're telling their residents that it's $30 per piece, like there's a big difference there. Now, great, if their town residents wanna pay that, recycle, but the goal is to recycle mattresses and to receive them at that area. So that's just part of, that was just one piece. We're not necessarily recommending that all of the fees have to be the same. We're just highlighting that there's a big disparity.
Information.
Good.
Wait, I think Andrew's next.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just would like to know, if you plan on doing the same type of questionnaire to the Packers. Going on their website first and see what they have, all the different, you know, commercial companies for the town, the residents in the town. And then maybe even, having somebody that actually has a service call up a list of questions, like they're just, you know, we just moved here, and see what kind of answers you get. And see how consistent they are among the Packers, because the way I see it is if you have a parent and children in school, the school tells them one thing, the play where they work, they're doing something different. And then the father takes the stuff down to the transfer station himself. That's 3 different ways. So they call up the town clerk and say, how do I recycle? But they don't know that they got, you know, county waste. So that's something I won't see it, but that's something that would be very interesting to find out how they are, because some of the people tell them, you don't have to recycle. You know, I mean, you've heard that before. So I'd like to, that's my suggestion.
Can I take that, Angela, real quick,
Sure.
and then you can add? So one thing that I'll say is that anytime somebody calls here, I've heard our staff specifically ask how they get their garbage picked up. And if it's a hauler, they're very specific that they need to reach out to the hauler and find out there, because we do dual stream, single streams different. And so something that we tell them may not be what their hauler expects, right? The other piece is that when we license haulers every year in the application, part of the packet goes to Angelina, and we ask them for what type of recycling education they do and to receive that in so that we can actually see what they're saying.
But the thought is that to call them up like you're a customer and ask them to see what actually they say, as opposed to, you know, we're from the Resource Recovery Agency and we'd like to know oh yeah, we do this, that, and the other thing. You know, that doesn't happen. Maybe it's getting better.
Sounds like a compliance thing more than
Right. And that's the other thing, is that Robert does transfer station floor inspections
Okay,
on a regular basis, where he watches what the haulers are in and looks at the level of
Okay.
contamination and notes it and reaches out to the hauler when there's a trend.
okay.
Did everything to add?
just always remember this only correct me if I'm wrong, it's like only 7% of the recycling comes from the towns.
Roughly.
Am I right about that?
7,
So I mean, we spend a lot of
Trash.
time talking
But
about
the majority
this
of our recycling comes from
the
the
towns.
towns, which is
Our
why I
recycling.
focused on
Yeah.
this was
Tiny
really
Oh,
towards
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Angie, what did you say?
Yeah.
You can't,
so the smaller percentage that you mentioned is relative to solid waste, but
Solid
the
waste,
vast
yeah.
majority of our recycling that we process at the agency originates with the towns, which was my motivation to conduct the report, because I feel like we have the most sphere of influence in that way. Whereas private haulers, their recycling programs are vastly different from company to company, and that recycling doesn't come here. So, as Mark mentioned, we do review all of their website information, their recycling guidelines, their contacts, annually, very actively. But for that reason, that's why I focus mostly on the MRDCs for
It's
this.
just more perspective,
Yeah.
because we spend a lot of time on that, but it is only 7%, so it is a pretty small percentage.
So just a couple points, not really questions. So the first is many communities' websites are run by the town clerks, not by the supervisors. So you may want to consider going to the Clerks Association meeting, and I apologize, I don't know the correct name for it. But whatever that is, I know they meet regularly. And that may be a better course of action, because I will tell you, clerks want to get information correct. They don't like because they're the ones who get the phone calls. So they want the correct information out there. So that's point one. Point two is just going in January with all those brand new supervisors who've been in office for 2.5 weeks. You might want to just go a little bit easy on them in the beginning. The third is, having been the president of that organization, if I can help you with any sort of one-on-one with the supervisors, let me know, because I'm willing to go to them, whereas it may not be as easy for you to just have dialogue and conversation with them instead of them having to come to us. So I put that out there, so.
Yeah, I said that as an opportunity
Yeah.
for there to tour, but I do go out to the supervisor's
Okay.
offices and we'll be happy to
Yeah.
travel.
Yeah,
and-
I'm just
and bring
offering
staff. Yep, but
as I think the only person here who's actually been that
Right.
person for 7 years. So.
Yep. That duly noted, yes, and oftentimes they won't have time, but I do think
Yeah.
it's important for them to see our operations, right? And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
that's offering the tour, and that
Yeah,
may not
yeah,
be the
yeah.
one-on-one, that might be a group of new supervisors
Yeah,
with legislators.
because you're right. There are a host of new supervisors this year. There are a
10
lot
or
of
11.
them, and something like that. Yeah.
Thanks for this. This is a lot of information.
Yeah.
Yeah. A
Great.
lot of work too,
great
so
stuff.
thank you. You and
Yeah.
your staff, please pass it along. Okay, on to the recycling tonnage report and the MRF cost center analysis.
So, October for MSW and C&Ds, the trend continues with regards to actual tonnage and our target tons. So our MSW was under the target by 608 tons. C&D, interestingly enough, picked up from September's numbers, which is off by 531, but now it's only short by 53. And sludge is almost spot on. Year to date, we are under our target through October, 5,846 tons, or 4.8%, which leaves us, every month I've been saying we've been around 136, so it's still probably somewhere between 135,000 and 136,000 tons is where we'll end up. And we budgeted for a total of 142,800. The recycling tonnage report, most of our regular incoming recycling is pretty consistent this month. I do want to point out that we did give grinding services to the town of Ulster and Marbletown, so you'll see wood chips on the far right, 309.72 tons, and we use that in our composting operation. But there's no other items of note. Well, I mean, I guess food waste, you see, we don't have to worry this year about when we cross over 5,000 tons as well, so that's not an issue like it was this time last year. More the same for the MRF cost center analysis for the month of October. Total sale of recyclables for the month, 22,622. Our costs related to the processing of the MRF, our residuals, transport and disposal related to that, our glass recycling, 11,575 for the month. As Mark already pointed out, hopefully going forward, that fast recycling number will come down substantially, dropping by $60 a ton. Hopefully that will end up working out. So our net revenue for the month was 11,047 for October. And on the back of that same sheet is our expenditures and bottom lines. Personnel and operating expenditures for the month was 46,412. Gave us a net loss for the month of 35,365. I don't know, I don't think there's going to be much change from this for November. December, I know we have 2 or 3 plastic loads that should go out in December, which should help the final number compared to what it is right now. Our net loss for the year is 204,000, which I think if you look on the far left column, I always like to have, because of the fluctuations. And how I always say, just because we have expenses get processed in 1 month, we don't realize those revenues sometimes until months later. So I like to have that monthly number. Our net loss that we've seen the previous 3 years was about 17,000 every month. And I believe that if you take the 204 and divide it by the 10, it's not too far off from that, right? 20,000. So bottom line, bottom right, $46.51 per ton is our loss. We charge a tipping fee if that's the amount that has break even. You'll see, unfortunately, on the segment market graph, you'll see, especially our fiber, which is that's what we routinely sell the most. That's the most volume. Those numbers continue to drop. I believe currently, even for OCC, that's now down to $50 a ton in the current month. So, and when you see November's report for this, you're going to see those numbers continue to drop.
Is that overstock or what, any idea why they're dropping?
No, I don't know specifically why they're dropping. I can tell you that the trend, this is the same trend we saw at the last quarter last year. They started to drop off, but they started to pick up at the end of December, beginning of January. I don't know if that's going to happen. A lot of times we've always, especially plastics is different, but there tends to be a lot of variables with these markets. A great example of that was, like, I could tell you, right, it's Christmas or we're shipping stuff and there's the effects on things. Plastic, people like to bring up, the fossil fuel industry might have an effect on that. But sometimes you have situations that are unique. Like I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, when all the stuff happened in China, right? Waste management just decided to flood the domestic market. So now we have so much supply to drove the price down. So that the point is that that specific variable was a one-time change that didn't follow the other reason. So I could tell you, right? Here's the reason why the fiber dropping, because here's why it always drops. Sometimes there's other reasons. So I don't always like to, unless I hear something specifically, I tend to not want to guess.
Okay.
Yep. So the last report, our treasurer's report. No line items of note on the revenue side. Our total revenue for the month was $1,917,908. You'll see on the HHW line, our October event cost $44,611. Total operating expenses for the month is $1,823,853, which gave us net operating revenue of $94,055. Capital outlay of $74,900 was the balance for our new roll-off truck. So we did have a surplus, a small one of $19,155. So our year-to-date surplus is $65,574. Any questions?
Board have any questions?
On the glass, March was there, there was no shipment in March.
Yeah, I never do a plot point unless we need something. Yeah, correct.
Well, I'll accept a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the treasurer's report?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Thanks, Frank. Let's see. Oh, and that brings us to our executive director's report.
Yeah, so this month I did a little different. It's kind of a final year wrap up. About some opportunities again, some challenges. We're making progress on many of the projects, but the reality is the progress is slower than I'd like. Whether it's the repower project or our organics expansion. The good news is that starting in January, we're going to be recycling mattresses, and that's all set. And these were some long-term projects that we've been working on, but the reality is that some of these projects have taken longer. In 26, we are going to want to focus on some of these projects that are in the capital project plan, that you all approved, and so, you know, somewhere in there in 26 or 27, we should be looking at doing that. The MRDC, like the agency MRDC over on the side, which would get us a little bit more full-time e-waste collection and HHW if we were to do that. So there's things that are in our 10-year capital plan that will move forward, but again, we've just been kind of plugging along in some of these long-term.
Remind me, how long have you been in the job?
So going on, almost 2 years.
Year and a half. It's pretty impressive for a year
Yeah,
and a half.
yeah,
That's a
It's like-
year, but
yeah, but
But
your
I mean,
progress.
that's a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
right? That's a
yeah,
lot of stuff
exactly.
that you did.
I'm used, it's going slower than I would like.
Right, yes, and it's
You
going
have
slower than I
patience.
would like too, but it is going, and it is
Yeah.
going, and it's picking up speed, and everything about the agency is so much more professional and well-run than when I came aboard, because we have a full staff now, you know.
We have a full staff and we're in a different spot financially,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
like the agency was in debt,
Yeah.
right? In a lot of debt, and so we have been able to do some things that the agency had never been able to do and focus on some other areas that were not a focus prior to me coming on board.
Right.
And we have a staff that does a lot of work to help us get to all these places.
Absolutely. So you were saying everything is moving slower and such, and I agree with you, but I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that a lot has been happening. Even before you came on board, but especially since you came on board, things have been moving in a very positive direction. Maybe slower than we like, but it's in the right direction. So I just want to make sure people appreciate that, the staff and.
We're happy it didn't spontaneously combust.
They wouldn't allow it to. It doesn't mean that I haven't.
Combust on us. I know that feeling.
So does the board have any
they'll
questions of
have
the executive
praise it.
director on this? All right, well then. Before we move on, before I risk forgetting, I just want to put on the record how much, this is officially Andrew Jersey's last meeting with the agency. Now, we have work to do tomorrow.
Regular meetings.
Regular, that's what I'm saying, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that I get on the record personally, and on behalf of the agency, appreciation for his years and years of service on and off the board, and he's always been involved. And he brings a really unique perspective, a very insightful perspective, a very quiet but knowledgeable perspective, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it.
Just observing everything over the last 25 years with the garbage in the agency. It was a fluke that I got started in it all. Actually, I got almost arrested by the DEC. Because the town had hired me to watch a landfill, because at the time, you didn't need a permit. So that they were dumping, they had C&D coming up from the city, but they needed someone to watch it. So I said, okay, because I was working, part-time, I was gonna do it. And we were there, and they only dumped about 5 or 6 loads over the course of 4 days. And all of a sudden, the DEC showed up, and they lined us all up against them, and had us, patting us down, all this kind of stuff.
I never knew that.
So, when I went to the town, they said, geez, what'd you do? They said, we're gonna make you recycling coordinator.
Well, we're
Origin
lucky that.
story.
Yeah, really.
Can I just add on to that story a little bit, because I don't know if you guys knew this, but when I was a young punk, about maybe 18 years old,
Yes,
and you
yeah.
were the recycling coordinator,
Right,
I volunteered to work for the town, work for Andrew, and we had a recycling bus, and we would, you remember that? We would,
Oh,
we
I
would,
did,
so we would, I helped them, the people would bring stuff to the bus, and Andrew would sort it, and that's how I actually got introduced to, so things come around, right? That's how
Yeah.
I became interested in recycling,
yeah, the town had nothing.
because of you.
And so I went to the town had a school bus, and I went to them and they donated a bus, we painted it white. And then I went to the prison and I said, we need someplace to drop these recyclables. So the prison said, okay. They started doing that, and then New Paltz started taking it, and it evolved from there. And then I did the leaf pickup, rented the truck myself, went around, picked up all leaves and stuff. They still do it. Not, but that's when I was young and could move around. Now,
Well, now we just benefit from.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So-
thank you very much. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
All right, well, back to work. Resolution 2666, authorizing and approving the 2026-2030 collective bargaining memorandum of agreement with between UCRRA and Local 445, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Mark, do you want to discuss this at all? You want to say anything about it?
This was again, like several back and forths with the union, met a couple of times, and I think where we started, which I kind of chronicled through emails with many of you, and don't want to get into the details of negotiations now, but I think this is a fair agreement for both the agency and our staff in the unit. Happy to answer any specific questions, but
I just have, actually, do you mind if I ask Tim, since
Yeah.
it's a financial? So Tim, the last version that was emailed out with the coverage as it is, the health insurance coverage, and I'll just not get into details, but is that financially sustainable for us over that 10-year
The
period?
100% of the spouse, the one.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk about details, but that's okay if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, the amounts we're talking about, you're talking about
Just the addition of the spouse.
The addition, yeah. I just want to make
Because the
sure that.
other,
retirees are already covered.
So-
Yeah, because it seems like the number of the 10-year projection jumped up considerably with that change, but
so
that's potential, right?
if we're just speaking about, right, this collective bargaining agreement, you're talking about $213,000 across 10 years.
Okay,
Includes that. 100%.
It's
So
about
20,000 a year.
461, including all staff.
and that's estimated because you never know, right, of who is gonna.
Of course, so you're
Okay.
taking a number of variables.
So that's a worst
in place,
case
right? You don't know
scenario.
exactly when people are gonna retire. We have an interesting population from the standpoint of there's such a large gap between who might retire now. They happen to be pretty close to 65, some of them, so your exposure to that ends up only being a year or two. And then there is really like I said, a big gap between that group and a secondary group where there's, I believe, 3 individuals, and then there's another gap where actually I would be included, but that's out 11 years. So any estimates I did, once you get out 11 years, really years 6 through 10 is kind of tough, but I think I could put a pretty good number on that. My estimates on premiums, I did about 5% each year, which I did increase. And those numbers are worked in there. I did about a 50% realization on any deductible, which is probably a little bit higher than where our actuals have been over the years. So I think it might even be a slightly conservative number because of all those variables. An example is that, like, I know one of our retirees is going to retire in June, but in order to keep consistency on this, everything was, as of January 2026. So
No, that's
like,
fine,
so there's
I
gonna be-
appreciate that answer.
Yeah, so there's gonna be ebbs and flows, let's say, with these variables. So while, say, this individual, maybe they cost us a little more because premiums went up, but this one didn't end up retiring, so you saved an entire year, which might offset that.
Okay.
So when you're talking, right, about health insurance, you should know.
Oh, I know. And that's why I'm asking the question, because I
So-
I
But
wanted to
Tim
make
went
sure, yeah.
conservative, meaning most exposure to the agency on all of his figures.
That's the answer I wanted to hear. I just
If-
was concerned if it was too much the
Yeah.
other direction.
And I spent when a lot of this came into place with regards to financial reporting, OPEB, as you might be familiar with the term. You tell a large school district I looked at, those numbers were astronomical. You got to put on your financial statement. So when this was first brought up, say 10 years ago, or not, but we had a situation like about 4 years ago where a lot of individuals who worked here, who were long-term 20, 25-year employees, they left and went to the city of Kingston, they went to Ulster County, they got their retirees health insurance, so when they went there, right, and we hadn't offered it, but it gave us this gap, which I think now makes it, fiscally possible for us to consider number one.
Okay. No, I appreciate the answer, thank you.
I do have, this is of interest to me, and I do have quite a number of questions, so I did write them down just to try to be a little more efficient in it, so, you know, instead of just droning on and on. So I do want to point out for the record that this board passed a resolution 2622 in October of 2024 that specifically excluded spousal coverage. Right, so the board has already voted on this initiative with spousal coverage within the last
This is a
year.
new collective bargaining agreement. This is a different
Okay.
board than the board that voted on that.
The board voted on it a year
Sure.
ago and voted it down, so I'm not sure why it's being brought up again, I guess.
So within negotiations, the union there's a back and forth negotiation period. And this was an important addition to them. They were not part of adding it to the employee manual last time. It did get put into their MBA, but we weren't at the negotiation for a new contract. So now that there was a new contract from 2026 to 2030, they felt very strongly that it was in, and frankly, they came off of some other numbers in order for us to include that.
They were involved there, because I do believe they submitted a letter. So, I mean, they were involved in that. So
Slightly,
To
it
say
was-
they weren't involved is not true, because they tried to influence at that point. So I don't know, it has been voted on recently, so I'm a little surprised it's coming up again. The next question, actually, I think you guys just answered for me, so I do appreciate that, but the financial analysis that you gave us, that's 400 and something, $500,000, Tim, that includes all agency staff as well as union?
I believe what you guys got, yes.
That's the full implication, that's not just the union employees,
Correct.
is
That's
that,
Correct.
is
That
that
is
correct?
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just was curious about that. In your financial calculation, you provided us with a list of employees, possibly two of which have already retired in 2025.
Correct. They would not be part of this,
But it was absolutely in the analysis that they would be part of this.
Well, they were both, neither of them have a spouse.
Correct.
Neither of them have a spouse that retired this year.
neither of the ones that retired in 25 have a spouse. When you
So
look at
this
the
is not like a
analysis.
retro thing. I guess it
It is
doesn't
not
matter.
retro.
Okay.
And it goes into effect in January 1st, 2026. But if you already retired, it would not go into effect.
So let me just give you a scenario, right? And I know you looked at individual employees here, but just so I'm not 100% sure I understand the implications, this kind of parlays off of what Mike was speaking about today. If you have an employee who retires at age 50,
Well, they
with
can't.
20 years.
They can't retire.
Okay,
at
what
age
age
50.
can they retire?
They have to retire in the state retirement system,
Okay.
which the minimum is 55.
55. Okay, so let's say they retire at the age 55 with 20 years of service. They're eligible for full medical coverage. Do I understand that properly? Okay.
Currently, they are for
Okay,
themselves.
funded by the ratepayers. Until eligible for Medicare.
So for 10 years
Right,
max.
okay. So if that employee has a spouse that's say, 30 years older, okay, quite a bit younger, let's say 20 years younger, you know, then that, when the employee retires, they're eligible for medical and their spouse is eligible for medical at that point, right?
As long as they were on the
The pl-
coverage at the
okay.
time that
So
they.
that spouse could collect medical benefits from the agency for 35 years.
Yes, that is
Okay, so
possible.
you have just interest in protecting the ratepayer here. So you have the potential for a spouse who's never worked here, right? Collecting for 35 years under our medical benefits.
At
Possibility.
some point down the road, I'm
Could
guessing that's a hypothetical
Could
that could happen, but we don't have anybody in our universe of
Right.
employees.
So I just
No,
kind of looked at the
right.
numbers, and that's $560,000. So we're paying $560,000, that is our ratepayers, for someone to have medical coverage who's never worked for the agency.
Well, we're not.
But it's not
because that
a
doesn't.
realistic number though. It's not
Why?
a part of,
Why is that
the
not
word
realistic?
actuarial, right, is actual. There's nobody in our population that
But
meets
there
that.
could be, I mean, this is
Well,
policy,
well, I
this
mean,
is a policy-
premiums could go up, right,
Yeah.
1,500%.
right?
I mean,
But
the
this
sun
is
could
This
explode
is
tomorrow.
a possibility that could
hypothetically.
happen,
Well,
you know,
if you're,
of
yeah,
course, right?
Of course, but I mean, I can't, how do I do an analysis?
Well, I'm
and
not
say-
asking you to do analysis, I'm telling you that in this particular example, which is a possible scenario, then the agency is obligated to $560,000 and premium payments to someone who's never worked at the agency. I'm just putting it out there that this is not like a small amount. This is not a small amount. It's a large amount, and it's really gonna affect the agency forever, because you're never gonna take that, you're never gonna roll that back. So,
Yeah, I mean, if we had a current employee in the same situation, we would also be providing those benefits. We had an employee who was 50 years old and had a wife that was 30.
right,
We'd be paying health benefits for them while they were here and employed and in a family.
well, they're not also not producing revenue.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to, I guess that was more of a point than anything else. I have a couple more questions here, if you bear with me. Does anybody else want to take?
Finish up.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Do we have any proposed provisions of the personnel policy that require that a spouse, if offered medical insurance by their own employer, so now in this scenario, it's the spouse is employed, right? And, and they're offered, that we require them to take their own employer's medical coverage upon retirement.
Upon retirement, no. Well,
So,
because
I mean, this might just be a way to mitigate some of my concerns here, so that's why I'm throwing it out there. If you have two employed people and ours is way, way better, way, way cheaper, then maybe they're gonna move over to ours, but really they should, if they have it available to them, maybe they should be asked to keep their employer retirement medical benefits. But it's not called out in our,
it's not
called out.
called out in, well, it wouldn't be called out right now in our personnel policy because that piece doesn't exist. Are you saying for current employees that they would need to choose to do that? Like if a spouse has the option of employer, I mean, there's lots of reasons why you wouldn't do that, but if a spouse has employee health insurance, that we force them to do that,
to take their own, take it from.
take their
Well,
own.
and either, I'm specifically talking
yeah, I'm
about
not-
retirement, but, on retirement, but I mean, I know with my husband and I had to take mine and he had to take his, and his was better. So if I took his, he was penalized because of that, because I had it available to me. So I'm just throwing that out there as a way to mitigate, but upon regular employment, but more specifically on retirement.
We could look at that. I don't have anything in this resolution adding anything to our personnel manual, so we're gonna have to do that in January anyway, like the specific language that would be added to the personnel. It will be in the CBA and it'll be covered, but if we're trying to put it in the personnel manual, I will be coming back to assuming this passes, I would then draft the language that would go in the personnel policy and.
Don't you have it in this resolution or the MOA that anything we do has to be approved by the union? I mean, that was one of the,
No, you're talking about health insurance policy, like, so
any
that's,
policy change, so isn't that the same?
that's not that. So they're talking about specific policy, so I'll give you an example. Currently, the collective bargaining agreement says that we have to provide MVP silver 8. This year we want to move to MVP bronze, which doesn't actually have an impact on the employee. The deductible is a little bit higher, so there's a little bit more risk, but the premium's lower. So we believe the agency will save money. It's the same plan but we couldn't do that without this change in language. So that's what that section 5 is speaking to. So when you're saying they have to approve, they're just talking about the plan, not the language in the.
So maybe we want to clarify that, though. I mean, to me, it wasn't, but,
Can I
I mean-
piggyback off that before you move on?
yeah.
Do we, and I apologize, I don't know the answer, do we offer a buyout for family plans or?
We offer our employees a buyout.
Yeah, the employee, so if somebody didn't wanna take our insurance and they take their spouse's insurance,
Yeah.
we offer a buyout.
26.
Okay,
$2,600.
okay,
A year or?
A year.
yeah. Cause the way we did it, it was complicated to do the math, but we basically did a difference between the cost of the two plus $1,000 and then divided it by the number of weeks of payroll, and they just got a check every payroll check. And some employees were getting a significant amount of money, but it was still saving town a lot of money because we weren't paying for a full family plan. So just, and I don't know if you change the buyout procedure, if that would help, because maybe we'd have some people that would go to their spouse's plan instead of being on our plan.
If it was a higher buyout,
Yeah. Because that's a relatively low buyout.
it is. We've
Sorry.
spoken about that.
But I don't think that would impact the contract.
Yeah, so the tricky thing I'll just say about requiring a spouse to move if they have a retirement plan is typically for employers, including us, you have to be on the plan for a certain amount of time prior to retirement to get retirement health insurance. And so if you were covering an employee's spouse and they were on our insurance, they would really have to know, okay, we're going to be retiring in 2 years. You have to move back to your employee's plan because otherwise it wouldn't be eligible for retiree coverage through their employer. Now, maybe they also, that mechanism wouldn't come into play because they wouldn't have it. They wouldn't be eligible for their own employment retirement health insurance because they weren't on their own plan the given year. So they'd still qualify for ours. You know what I mean?
But I'm just not sure why the agency should be paying for a spouse if the spouse has it available through their own employer. In terms of retirement,
Well,
if
yeah,
they
yeah.
offer a retirement,
Yeah, I don't-
similar, you know, like, that seems like an unfair burden on our ratepayers. in
Yeah,
that
I don't
particular
think that
case.
that's common. I mean, I know we have one person who will be retiring at some point in the near future and that their spouse has retiree health insurance and they wouldn't be covered in ours, and so they're not in the actuarial because their spouse like gets their own insurance and will be taking that.
So they're not
So-
covered in our actuarial, but they could change their mind and that would, right? So, I mean, there's all kinds of variability that could happen here, but it concerns me.
What I'll do is, because I gotta bring it back in January, just the language and like the collective bargaining agreement wouldn't change, because that specific language isn't in there anyway. What I can do is I can look at and have Nancy look at whether we legally could do that, and then I'll draft language to put in the personnel policy to match that for January.
Yeah, it doesn't change, it wouldn't change.
It
the
doesn't change
contract
this
We're
because-
still offering it, but
Right.
we're saying who's eligible. Yeah.
While you're doing a legal review, I still am asking that this resolution 2622 that we passed a year ago, I'm not sure, that's been passed already. I'm not sure why we would be revisiting that at this time. I
Is it
mean,
the-
can we revisit any one of our resolutions? So,
Absolutely.
okay, so
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
for example, you know, the EV vehicles that we purchased, can we pull that back and change our mind on that? I mean, that's, okay, well, because you're not
That's not a
supposed
good
to.
example.
That is a good example, you
Well,
know.
we added it to the contract that is now expiring. So that's what that resolution was doing. It was adding it to the collective bargaining agreement that was expiring and added it to the personnel policy, that it was both. And now this is adding it to the collective bargaining agreement moving forward from 26 to 2030.
It's a it's a policy change.
How does divorce, say they qualify, the man and wife qualified for this, then he retires, she's collecting it, and then they get divorced. Is she still covered or is
No.
she not a spouse anymore?
Not a spouse.
Okay. And,
And we have it in our language that if the retiree predeceases the spouse, then the coverage ends.
okay.
Which is,
And-
that's like the one provision I disagree with.
But that's what happens if an employee passes away. They can pick up the full, they go on COBRA. And then, you know, so we do give the option that the spouse can pay the full premium,
Yeah.
the full premium and continue on our coverage.
You're depending on this, you know, and if you're out of the workforce at that point, now you have no coverage. I guess there's other options.
What
but-
about, one other question, what about, I don't think you have this, but a union member who keeps paying his dues but doesn't work here? Keeps paying the dues with the union.
They're not an employee.
They're
They're
not
not
an employee.
employees, so they're not covered, because it's not,
You
yeah.
have to
You have to
retire
do
in
it
the
through the
state
union, that's okay.
benefit. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to go through the state retirement system, which vets that, right? They have to retire from here. So even if they worked here for 30 years, they didn't retire from here, they don't get the retiree health insurance.
Okay.
They have to, and let's say they got retired but didn't retire through the state retirement, they're just done working, that does not qualify them for retiree health insurance, would not qualify them for spousal coverage. And their spouse does not get the $2,500 stipend, so really there is a cap, but there's a cap for all of it, because our retirees can't be over, they can't retire till they're 55. We only cover them on our policy until 65, and then they get a $2,500 stipend for supplemental because they have to go to Medicare. The spouse does not get that $2,500.
Yeah, more
I do have a
questions.
few
Yeah.
more. I apologize, but, okay, I tried to make it, okay. So we were provided on Monday with a memorandum of agreement for 50%, and then it changed to 100%. So how did that huge change happen in one day?
Yeah, so in conversations with the union reps, it became clear that the negotiation, and as you'll see it written, was like, my intention was that we were adding what was talked about last year with this board. Their intention was that it was 100%, and we didn't communicate that well enough to each other. And so this week, after I was dropping everything, we had a meeting just to talk about, make sure everything was solid. It became clear that confusion was there. They had said they wouldn't have agreed to other provisions in the agreement had it not been the 100%. And so I said that I would put it in front of this board at 100%.
Isn't that what an MOA is? Didn't they not have something in writing?
Well,
They agree to it in
it says that
writing,
it
or-
added to the lifetime insurance. I did not, which in fairness to them, the lifetime insurance just adding the spouse would mean 100% coverage. But in my mind, it was thinking about the provisions that we were talking about last year, which actually wasn't part of the resolution because it never made it that far. It was clear that that at that time, that board didn't support adding the spouse, right? So the resolution didn't actually cover the spouse at all. The resolution that you passed didn't talk about that. Well, there was discussions in previous months, but the resolution, to your point about whether you can take it up and after it was just taken up, only included retiree health insurance.
Okay, two more questions. No, let's get the other two questions. However, I would like to, I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna make a motion to approve resolution 2666, excluding the provision to provide medical coverage to the spouses.
A resolution for discussion? I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. So excluding that provision, that's my resolution to amend.
So I'll just say to the board, and you all can do whatever you want. I think that would mean, like, I do not believe that the union would ratify this MOA minus that section. And so we would go into next year without a contract, which this
It's not
agency has
uncommon.
done before. It's not uncommon, but
Well, I want to support our workers 100%. So I would be opposed to that change to this resolution. And I feel like it's not a great deal of money. I feel like having this provision will essentially, in my mind, be good for our workers morale, be good for recruiting. It's just the right thing to do. We want to support our workers and we want to support their families. It's a relatively negligible amount of money. It provides an incentive for people to stay here. It provides a disincentive for people to leave because they can have their spouses covered elsewhere. I think that it would be penny wise and pound foolish to approve the amendment to the resolution. With all due respect, you ask a lot of good questions, but I just fundamentally disagree with it. I think that we should approve this as originally passed, so I would be a no on the amendment. Anyone else?
Yeah, I normally, I support what you're saying because I do have some of the same issues of carrying spouses for extended periods of time. I'm comfortable because of the age 65 cap that at 65, we're not paying retiree, the employee, or the spouse coverage, which I think is a big help. The fact that they can't retire until 55. I heard your scenario. Is it possible? Absolutely. But is it realistic? Probably not. And if it is, it may be one person. And I'm just still not 100% confident that that would ever happen. You can worry about the what ifs, but I think in general, what Jim just said is this is a good faith to our employees to keep them longer, they're not going out and looking for another job. I would like to explore though the idea of a different type of buyout system in the future that we can upgrade to make the buyout be a little more attractive, because then maybe we may not, maybe even in just some not retirement age people, but in general coverage, we may not be paying family if we're paying a buyout. And I found in every situation we save money in town. So, but I agree with Jim. And as I said, I don't normally support the coverage for the spouses with zero, because let me be correct, there's zero contribution, right? There's no, yeah.
Well, assuming you get to 20 years.
Right. Understood.
50% can.
Understood. But still, it's concerning, but I agree with Jim. So I would definitely vote no on the amendment. So.
Yeah, I agree with what the both of you said. And I had a conversation with Tim yesterday about, my curiosity as a board member was, how does this sit against the budget? Can we financially do this? And Tim explained to me how it could be done. I felt really confident and comfortable with this. So it would also be a no on this motion.
I was originally opposed to the spouses, but having heard all the different scenarios where it doesn't work and putting the agency in a position where we don't have a contract, which could mean a strike, and hearing what Mike had said, being more in with the insurance and the workings of the government and stuff, because I have no idea about this entire, how it works. My original assumption was that, they just got it and stuff, but it seems like you got a lot of, you have a lot of coverage, or you have to depend on your knowledge. And so I would not support the removing this amendment.
Can I just clarify one thing that you said?
What's that?
So they're in the current contract, and there's no strike language. So
I understand.
we would be without a contract, but I am not concerned about a strike
I
per
know
se.
you're not
I just want to publicly,
It's a
like,
possibility, it's
yeah.
always a possibility.
Right.
So,
they can't strike.
oh, well, that's right, because you're considered essential services. Or
Right.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. about
That's,
that.
but
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Okay, so,
So one I'm just, I hear what everybody's, but that was my opinion. But also I ran the calculations on my strangely, my scenario, right, that was extreme. And so just that, in that particular case, not only is it over $500,000 to cover a spouse that was never an employee here, but you have another $250,000 for the employee. So it's $750,000 in that particular scenario. And if you have a couple of those, it could really severely impact the agency. So I'm just putting that out there.
All right, so on the resolution as amended,
sorry, on the amendment.
on the amendment, okay, I'm a no. All in favor of the amendment? Well, pardon me, I'm getting a little punchy. On the amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay, so the amendment is defeated, 1-4. On resolution number 2666 as written, can I have a motion to approve, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2666.
Okay, can I have a second,
I'll
please?
second it.
Okay, all in favor of resolution number 2666? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
okay,
Ned,
Resolution number
You got two nays?
2666
okay.
passes 3-2. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you for a good in-depth discussion.
No, it's good, and it's a good conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I will be coming back in January with the language, and I will look at that language as far as we discuss.
I know we've already voted on it and everything, but yeah,
But we'll look at the language
I
that
mean-
you're talking about as a safeguard to,
it seems like it's pretty, some of the policy, it's pretty loose and can be taken advantage of that. That's all, just
Yeah.
my interpretation.
So
Everybody likes to
Right
sue the
back.
agency, so
and choose back.
I could see, well, I shouldn't say good things, I could see possible problems, but
Should be really, really clear how
Yeah.
those things are applied.
so you were a no on the overall collective bargaining. I just want to.
no,
Yes,
Second.
he said no.
on
I
the,
just
Not
want
on
to
the
clarify.
amendment.
no.
That's what I mean. So was it your intention to be a no on you said no on the overall collective bargaining agreement, but you can clarify that now.
Yeah, no, on the whole agreement.
No on the agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
that's fair.
So it's 3-2.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Actually, only to clarify the language that we're talking about. And,
It passed.
Yeah.
It passed.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there is no old business. The new business,
Organically.
Erica, yes, Erica can hear us, so,
Yeah.
so you had a question, Mike?
Yeah, well, question that probably may lead to a discussion that we probably should put on next meeting's agenda, but with the increase in the permit for the organic waste, and I know you've put in the MRDC's contracts about organic waste, is there a way we can come up with a consolidated program for collection of this, similar to we provide the roll-offs for all the recycling? Because I can tell you as a supervisor, we stopped doing it because we get, 3 35-gallon waste containers that I then have to have an employee put it in the back of a pickup truck, drive it up here. And it just became not worth it, to be honest, to make it a priority. So I'm not asking for an immediate answer, but if we can work toward, if we want to make it a priority, I think we need to work with the local municipalities and in some fashion, whether it's we have a small box truck or a pickup truck or whatever that goes around, and whether we provide the containers at a low cost rental to help be consistent, or whether we say this is the type of container. But I think for us to make that program work, we need to show a little bit of the initiative to make it work. And I think in the long run, a lot of municipalities will work with us. It's a matter of getting people on board with it. And in Rochester, so many people said, we compost at home ourselves.
That was the original plan, right? And I think Tim wrote a significant grant with all what you
Okay.
just said. And
So we're waiting to hear back. We were told in December, and it's December, so it was part of the consolidated funding application. And that's, hearing back on that is any minute now, but the goal of that is to provide in-vessel composting containers to each of the MRDCs and actually have them be able to compost on site and offer it to their
Oh.
residents.
Okay, I misunderstood that part.
You might not have been.
We can,
I thought the goal was for us to accept it.
Dump trailer.
Oh,
no,
that was
so
more support.
we would prefer to have them, going back to the whole circular economy. We would prefer people to backyard compost first of all.
Okay,
That would be ideal, where people can't backyard compost, and we'll work on doing more education and getting more people out. Where they can't backyard compost, we'd prefer the MRDCs to collect and do it on site,
Mhm.
or work with like community compost and others to do collection points in like places like villages or the city, and the city's already doing it with curbside coming up. We would prefer that they keep that compost there as opposed to bringing it here and using gas and other things to do that. If the only option is to do that, with something we can evaluate, especially if we don't get the grant.
Okay, yeah, because, yeah, I'm guessing that in so many communities, there's so much organic material going into the way, the MSW, that it's gonna cost us less money on the other end, and them too, in the tonnage, if it's not in the MSW, and if it's.
Yeah.
That's all, I mean, and I apologize, it may have been before I got.
It's kind of before you got, but I thought it was like, the budget was, correct me if I'm wrong, $20,000 per municipality, and they could kind of decide what they wanted to do with that as long as it was
That's what we-
aligned.
That was a first version, and then in this grant, that the county is actually the applicant for this CFA application to the Climate Smart Communities Program. We determined, I think it was 3 different options depending on the expected volume of food scraps. You know,
And
we looked
pickup
at.
wasn't one of them, though?
Pickup was not, because again, as Mark is saying, like, the ideal situation here is to process that compost as close to the generator as possible. And so, you know, it is understood that there will be, if the grant is awarded, and if not, there will be work here to figure out, there may be some exceptions. There may be some towns that literally just don't have a spot for a 20-yard container that would have the equipment, or really 2, because we'll need to fill one. It has to sit and cure while they fill the second. So if there's space constraints or other concerns, then there may have to be another option. But we had sized containers, we had identified the right equipment for each container, some shared equipment that would help, you know, with turning, or we'd offered our roll-off drivers could do a tipping of the roll-off containers when we're there to pick up the other containers. So we had kind of thought through a plan. We'll see if the grant is successful, it'll jumpstart that plan. If it isn't, then we'll have to go back to the drawing board and figure out if there's other more affordable ways to do it.
And those containers are bear-proof?
Yes, they are covered metal
Closed there.
roll-off containers.
Okay.
And the DEC doesn't have a problem with them sitting there more than a week or anything like that?
No,
No.
most of the
It's
vast,
under-
vast majority of these would all be, they would have to register, but they are under permitted requirements. So that's all the, I mean,
Yeah, I know.
there's a lot of work that would have to
Yeah.
go into each one. They would all have to at least register to be a composting site and all of that. So, I mean, it's a 4-year grant.
And we would help them with the process, I
Yes,
would hope,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, in the grant, we're hiring additional staff.
Okay.
Including operations staff to come around and do some.
Okay, thank you, because that's, for it to work, I think we need to handhold.
We did find out today that we did not get the SWIFT grant. So we have a debriefing that we've asked for, so we'll find out why, but that was not one, it was the EPA. We're kind of surprised the program was still around, so it's not one that we were counting on, but still unfortunate news.
But when was our permit modification for additional composting at this site? When was it effective? Like, that's enforced now? That's enforced now?
Additional
Yes.
permitted
Yeah.
capacity is in effect now, I think it was October.
September.
It's not like we have to wait the first year.
No.
Gotta do that for the mattresses though.
Just
No, it was an interest.
the mattresses, just to
Just
get
the
the program up and running in the
Yeah.
contract, yeah. And the piece bill.
How many mattresses are we expecting a month?
Well, we do 10,000, so like 800, 700 a month.
Yeah, just tell me 17,000. I was like, really?
Well, that was if we were gonna talk in depth about the contract, we managed to do it without naming.
I think there was a request about,
Do you wanna do an executive session?
I would like to do one for a short few minutes.
Okay, so we need, what would be the rationale for going into executive session?
it's here for the purpose of discussing matters to leading to the potential employment of
Okay.
the corporation.
Right. So,
Oh, you want me to make a motion?
yes, so, I'll accept a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second
Executive
it.
session is for the purpose, just for the matters leading to the potential employment of a certain corporation. Okay, all in favor of going into executive session? Aye. Okay, opposed? Nay, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go into executive session. We're not executive session at 8:29.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Anyone want a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning our meeting?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
See you.
See you.
Thank you, everyone. See you in
Save them all.
Not quite, a little more than 12 hours.